Last week's arrest of Illinois State Governor Rod Blagojevich on charges of attempting to auction off Barack Obama's open Senate seat has raised a chorus of voices calling for his resignation, possible impeachment. But is Blagojevich just the tip of an American corruption iceberg? With us to discuss the issue is Mark Karlin, editor and publisher of BuzzFlash.com. Hello, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Paul.
Blagojevich has been in power for quite some time. It's only because of an FBI wiretap do we know that he called up the Chicago Tribune and asked to get certain people off the editorial board off the board, or he would slow down or stop the Tribune organization from selling their baseball stadium. One can guess perhaps these phone calls take place every day across the country, but where the heck was the media for the last 6-8 years on Blagojevich?
I think that the media was waiting for the end of really what is a 3-year investigation, and the arrest came toward the tail end of that 3-year federal investigation overseen by Patrick Fitzgerald of the Scooter Libby fame. The Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times were covering that investigation to a certain degree as the U.S. Attorney's Office leaked to them. But as to why the media does not cover corruption more before it is prosecuted, I think that's to a great extent due to the fact that the television media in particular relies on advertising from political campaigns. The New York Times had a story just today, as we're speaking, December 16th, that $2.7 billion was spent on political advertising in the 2008 campaign cycle. That's quite a lot of money into the coffers of big corporate media.
So one can imagine if you're willing to threaten a newspaper editorial board on their baseball field acquisition, you can imagine corporate, at least at senior levels of corporate levels. I don't know how this translates down in the editorial newsroom, but certainly there you can imagine some phone calls, or at the very least fear that we won't get the big lion's share of the ad buy this cycle.
I think the print media industry, which is starting to go under, would be in very difficult straits. I think most of the money does go to television, the lion's share. But what you have here is a cycle of corruption on the part of many politicians. They feel they need to raise tons of money, as Blagojevich found he was very good at. In his case, it was overt extortion. With many politicians, it's a wink and a nod. What made him different is he crossed the line into actually telling people that they would get a contract or a job if they paid to play. Now, how does this all fit in if we look at the overall context and not just Blagojevich? Well, Blagojevich felt that he needed millions and millions of dollars, in essence, to scare off other people. And he needed those millions of dollars, in essence, to buy, in large part, television advertising. This is the same for presidential candidates, senatorial candidates, congressional candidates, gubernatorial candidates, and it becomes a vicious cycle. The news media needs this money. And remember that the real news, as an alternative to all of this, is a wonderful example of what our options are. But the corporate media needs this money in order to survive. And therefore, the politicians and the corporate media really synergistically support this cycle of corruption. Let me just add one thing. One of the key things in American politics, and Blagojevich did this in the 2002 race, is you raise so much money that you scare off the opposition. So that if someone sees, as Blagojevich did in 2006, that he has $12 or $14 million in the bank in campaign funds, Democrats as well as Republicans are scared off in terms of running against him because they know they can't buy the television ads or the print ads that he can buy with that amount of money. He quickly caught on to that, and he quickly caught on that it was his best skill. which is to say shaking down people for campaign.
If I understand correctly, in Illinois, there's no limits on how much a corporation could contribute to a political campaign. Is that correct?
That's correct, Paul. There's no limits on what a corporation can contribute, and there's no limits on what an individual can contribute. Illinois is one of the few states that still has that antiquated Wild West version of you can give as much as you want to candidate, and it's completely, entirely legal. The difference between Rod Blagojevich and many people in Washington is simply that Blagojevich crossed the line, and it's a technical one, because he overtly tied contracts and jobs to giving campaign funds by saying, you will get the contract or the job if you give the money.
Mark, in the next segment of our interview, let's talk about what can be done to solve this. Will this, such an overt scandal in Illinois, and given that it touches on the Obama administration, might it push that administration and Congress into much more serious measures to fight this systemic corruption? Please join us for the next segment of our interview with Mark Karlin.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars and into environmental disaster, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Real hope means facing a complex reality. Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute. Visit therealnews.com.